What the hell was that? And you could tell it's important because this must be the first time in a few hundred casts that I haven't done the proper calling section where I welcome you all to the show. Quite frankly, it's because I'm so appalled at myself, guys. For those of you that don't know what I'm banging on about, who missed the fact that cast 335 was put up the other day for all of about, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours before someone went, Guile, you absolute muppet. In fact, they were much more polite to me than I am about myself right now. They say, Guile, you muppet. So, of course, I'm paraphrasing. You've cast this game already. And the first time I read that, actually, it popped up on my phone. I went, no, I haven't. What is he talking about? And then someone else said it. And then someone else said it. And then someone else said it. And then someone messaged me through Facebook to say it. So I went back and checked. And I had indeed cast that very game just a few months ago. I think it was like 3 months ago or something. I had cast that exact game and had no idea. Absolutely no recollection of it whatsoever. That's like watching a film. And then, no, in fact, it's worse than that, because you have to watch it on high speed, first of all, to make sure that it's actually something that you're going to watch. So it would be a peculiar thing to do, I grant you, but watching a film at high speed, checking out, okay, yeah, that's worth watching, then sitting down and watching it so intently you never take your eyes off the screen, and then 3 months later, doing it all again, and at no point having your brain trigger even the remotest thing of familiarity, like just not registering it at all, like it never happened. That's frightening. It's so unbelievably frightening. It's insane, and it was apt that I started off the intro of that cast by talking about how getting old sucks. And I said it to I went to the wife as well. I said, I'm trying to impart the gravitas of the situation, and she was like, well, you do watch an awful lot of replays instead of helping me with housework. It's like, that's great, fine. Yeah, choose now to talk about my housework participation. Ignore my early onset dementia. Just forget about that. That's not important right now. Yeah. Anyway, it's tip-top pro ladder action on the cards this afternoon. You know what? I'm going to put it back up for my own penance. The video in the background's going to run out in a second. I don't even care. But for my own penance, I'm going to do this cast, and then at some point today, I'm going to re-release and open it back up, because lots of people, I feel sorry for the people who hadn't realised they were watching it, they were enjoying it, and I just took the video down. People halfway through watching it. It's incredibly rude, and they're still waiting to find out what happened. Of course, they could just go back through my back catalogue and watch it. But anyway, so yeah, it will go up today so that you guys can be abusive. I'm sure you won't, but you can be, and I won't say anything back because I deserve everything I get. But that will appear later. Anyway, pro level ladder on the cards this afternoon. It's going to be taking place on Canis 4v4 Special or Special Edition. I'm ready, you guys are ready, and the players are ready, so let's go on over to the game zone and see how these guys are going to get on. Ching, ka-ching. I'm trying to compose myself after that rant. I'm sorry, that went on ridiculously long. But, yeah, it was just a bit of a shock, to be honest. But anyway, let's take a look at today's game. We don't need to call out the teams. Interestingly enough, though, we're not doing like an adaptive Canis here. This is Canis 4v4 Special Edition, customary map for team games galore, one of the quintessential 4v4 maps. But they've still got all of the maps available to them, so things should escalate quickly, and they should struggle to build power, as Heaven thankfully illuminated to me on his stream the other day when he was playing this on ladder. Let's take a look at our players. So up here at the top in the red corner, we have WoundedElk. He's rocking this season's slightly fashionable Aeon, and he's going first land there. And his opponent down here at the bottom of the screen in the blue corner, been around back and forth since the early days of FAF and before. It's none other than Blackdeath, sporting the season's always unfashionable Cybrin, going first land. So there we go. This game took place back in, what was it? It's like the 21st of June, I think it was. I pulled this off the replays for casting thread. So if you've seen it before from one of the other casters, I do apologise. If you've seen it before on my channel, I do apologise. Anything's possible at this point, so ruling nothing out, but it's, you know, all bets are off on that front. Opening, you know what? This cast is a disaster as well, because I haven't done the split screen so you guys can watch the opening, but I don't want to relive all that again and have to explain and apologize, so we're just going to have to deal with it. But early units out here from Blackdeath are a couple of moles and one lab there. That hunter, where is he headed? He's coming up in to disrupt things at the back there of WoundedElk's base. I'm not actually sure if WoundedElk has changed his name for anything else. I think I've seen him in one or two other matches. Yeah, he's certainly a gulf between these two players in terms of global ranking points. 1844 for Blackdeath versus 1516 in ladder ranking, not global ranking, sorry, for Blackdeath there. So a good chunk of points there, 300 and something points between these guys. So there's definitely a favourite, and it's definitely not WoundedElk, but you never know with this game. And in comes the hunter. Looks like he might potentially pick off an NG, or in fact two. There goes the first one. One more volley. No. There it goes. And the second engineer's making a run for it. Looks like he's trying to get the reclaim order off, but he's not going to manage it. Those two guys grew up together in engineering camp and died together as well on their very first mission. How very apt. Finally the lab gets dealt with, but definitely good hampering tactics there from Blackdeath. Having said that, WoundedElk is actually out-ecoing him by 2 mass for the time being, so the added APM invested there hasn't helped Blackdeath get an advantage in this one as yet. Still battling the dregs of that cold that I had in the last one, guys. In fact, this thing has been going on for months now. It's absolutely hideous, so apologies out again for you guys having to listen to the phlegm, but it's part and parcel of the casting game, unfortunately. Scout planes out for both these guys. Blackdeath with one up at the corner, and then one over the main base, and another one for WoundedElk coming back down the map in the opposite direction. Getting an early read on what's going on there. Quite a lot of T1 spam now heading south for WoundedElk. A couple of Auroras surprise a Mantis to get the better of him. One of the Auroras down to about 50 odd HP. He'll get finished off by a reinforcing Mantis there. See how these guys are doing on the power side of things. Well, pretty good power balance there for WoundedElk. He seems to be producing enough. Lots of hydrocarbons to take advantage of on this as well. I'm not sure if that's the same version of Canis that Heaven was talking about. I'm sure he'll chime in if he's watching in the comment section, probably where I'm going wrong on that side of things. There goes a T1 bomber from WoundedElk. Didn't get a bomb off. Gets shot down. Good defensive work there from Blackdeath. Blackdeath, plenty of power in the bank for him as well. So one air factory, and then it really is colossal land all day for WoundedElk, and much the same story with Blackdeath, although Blackdeath being a little bit more conservative with the number of factories he's choosing to build at this stage. But that gives you an inkling into the early strategies these guys are going to employ. Looks like we're going to have a mass T1 spam exodus here from WoundedElk's base. Blackdeath gaining control of the skies over the top of WoundedElk's base, shooting down an Inti there as it rolls off the conveyor belt. Catches another 2 up here at the top as well. That should be 2 for 1 at least. Might even have been 2 for none there. Good exchange for Blackdeath, but a potential Mantis incursion, or Mantis run by even if he can get in around the back. He's going to catch a few NGs on the way past. What's WoundedElk seeing? Well, that surprise catching him unawares. Very little intel on this region of the map. And concerning him enough to pull his commander out to deal with it. Those Mantis picking off another Aurora. Could make a play, pick off a few mass extractors, but Blackdeath more concerned with the counter push that's coming in the opposite direction. Blackdeath with a small potential advantage cast aside there as he looks to his defences. I don't think he would have got more than a couple of mass extractors had he issued the order, but still would have slowed up WoundedElk a little bit, but he has managed to regain or gain the lead in terms of eco. So it's 35 to 31 in favour of Blackdeath, 800 power to 580. So eco-wise, for the time being, Blackdeath asserting himself in this game. A couple more straggling Auroras. Well, I was about to say got picked off there, but actually they managed to survive. They're not going to make it past the commander, though. Not in that direction. Well, if the commander is busy about his work, they might just... Oh, no, it's a good place to stop there. The sunlight is fabulous in this area of Canis. It's a great place to go sunbathing. Could you see? It's like flies to Vigo. Not remotely bothered in the slightest. Not going to change build orders or general orders there on my commander just to swat down a puny little Aurora. So both players yet to gain control of their plateaus. However, WoundedElk the closest to doing so. NG in the region already, and actually has an Aurora out there ready to bust any Cybran NGs that might be coming in. However, we've got an NG drop going somewhere. I'm wondering if that's a mass NG drop to the plateau or whether it's something a little bit more offensive. Blackdeath setting up shop here now with two land factories very close to WoundedElk's territory, and indeed he is going to use that to bypass this little, I was about to say squad, but this two-man team. The sniper and his spotter there. And they've been well and truly bypassed and given alternative orders. They're going to trundle on over to Blackdeath's main base, see if they can pick up a kill or two there. Small Aurora run by, and of course the floaty naughty coming into action here. Aeon advantage traversing the river. It's going to run into a whole load of Medusas there crossing the causeway. Micro very unfashionable these days. A lot of players just deciding it's not how they like to play. Couple of T1 bombers deals with that, but another significant Cybran incursion now into WoundedElk's base. WoundedElk still has his HCU in the area. That's going to be helpful. And you can see the mass rows of T1 P-gens being thrown together now as WoundedElk tries to keep pace with his economic expansion. We got over here, tactical missile defense going up, so we're at T2 for WoundedElk. This incursion going to come to nothing as well, just crashing headfirst into the commander. Does pick up a couple of NGs there. Cancel the build queue on those T1 P-gens, but no great loss. But the emergence of T2 means, of course, Obsidians. And a handful of those can do an awful lot of damage. Very nice little bit of work, though, around the back of Blackdeath's base. WoundedElk getting 5 Auroras in to take out all of the T1 mexes in that bottom right-hand corner. And that's gifted him the edge. 63 to 61 now between these two guys. Both have grabbed the plateau. Blackdeath shifting up that way to the top right of the screen. There is a land factory about to complete. 4 Auroras lying in wait. Soon to be 5 and 6, in fact. Could do with a T1 PD. All of this, well, I was about to say all of this is Mantis spam, but it's not. We do have some Medusas back here. Could be about to see the demise of the top right-hand corner for WoundedElk. Might put Blackdeath back in front. Having said that, 67 now to 65, or 61 a moan to go. Not even any construction orders given to that land factory. WoundedElk gonna let that go. But you have to give it to WoundedElk. So, I mean, we're nearly 12 minutes in now. He's giving up 300 ladder ranking points. 15, 16 in ladder might still sound like a hefty score, but there's a gulf of difference usually between these classes of player. And at the moment, he is doing a really good job of keeping up with Blackdeath. Blackdeath sneaks in front as I'm talking in terms of mass, 69 to 65, but that's pretty good going. Has to be said, I'm suitably impressed. We now have a T2 HQ on the field there for Blackdeath on the ground, and he's put that right up front. Give himself plenty of reinforcement advantage up front, and we've also got T2 Air on the field for Blackdeath. Is that matched up here for WoundedElk? Yes, it is. So both these players now at both T2 Land and Air. Relatively quickly, but an example of just how much mass is available to both of these guys. Lots of T1 Air on the field now for WoundedElk. And a couple of the Obsidians we saw earlier. Deep, deep into Blackdeath territory. Suffering from EMP exposure from those dreadful, dreadful Medusa thingies. But to WoundedElk's credit, he manages to evict Blackdeath from the top right-hand corner. He looks like he was trying to set up shop there with a skyhook in the area. T1 bomber trying to harass. He has managed, in fact, to get an auto gun down, so obviously he's airlifted some engineers and they've been killed subsequently, probably by that T1 bomber. And tactical missiles coming out over the river now in very close proximity to Blackdeath's ACU, so he needs to watch it, going straight after that forward T2 ground HQ. That land factory bites the dust. And so does the wreck. Can't even recycle it. And does he have T2 land anywhere else? No, there is no second HQ. So Blackdeath officially demoted to T1 on the ground. That gives WoundedElk an advantage as he starts to roll in with another platoon of Obsidians. There's a lot of Mantis down there on the ground though. T1 bombers coming in to assist, but it is covered by a few inties. Nowhere near the same number of inties as WoundedElk has got though. We're not seeing an awful lot of anti-air. I suppose we've got a couple of tracers down there. That's forcing WoundedElk to keep his distance. Very concerned about holding on to his advantage in the air game, it has to be said. Obsidians trying to prioritize those hoplites as and when they can when they get into range. Blackdeath sees an opening. He's going to cross the causeway now. And that's a lot of T1 spam that could get into the main base. Out comes a Spectre though. No ground-to-air munitions in the area for Blackdeath, so T2 gunships can operate with impunity. Obsidians eating Medusa fire, but still just enough to keep Blackdeath contained, who is now, I'd say, sitting on about 55% map control there or thereabouts. And WoundedElk still trying to get it re-established up here at the top right. Needs to get some factory presence in that area of the map. Bank of T1 PDs going up over here. Aurora's thinking for a cheeky run by. They're about to be harshly surprised. Another mix of units over here, and another bank of T1 PDs as well. Blackdeath really shutting down the map and trying to contain WoundedElk. Take away some of the advantage the Aeon have, being able to go anywhere they please. In comes some Corsairs, and suddenly that merry band of tanks is down to just a couple. Blackdeath re-establishing HQ in the middle of the map there, right up front, and has got a few zappers online as well to defend against these TAC missiles that are still coming in across the river. 3 of them online there. Enough to defend against those TAC missiles. There we go. Pretty comfortable there. Nothing to worry about. Spectres repositioning over here. I'm wondering if WoundedElk is thinking about taking out some of these PDs. If he keeps his interceptors nearby, he's certainly got the Air Force to cover them. Massive air advantage in this game so far for WoundedElk, but a couple of T2 air factories down there at the bottom. How many have we got up here at the top? Well, just the one. So Blackdeath potentially looking like he wants to strip WoundedElk of that air lead that he's acquired. T1 PD up here is not going to complete, I don't think. Couple of engineers left. They're going to get eviscerated by that swarm of Mantis. Do excuse me. Corsairs brought in to harass the main base. 1 mech's down up here at the back. Like they completely missed that mass extractor, nicking it for about 150 HP. And finally, that Corsair gets dealt with as well. But there are quite a few Corsairs in the air now over here, brought in to kill off the Spectres. WoundedElk's Air Force loitering up here by the main base where it really didn't need to be. That's good distraction technique from Blackdeath, sending a couple of Corsairs up to the main base and drawing all of WoundedElk's Air Force away from those gunships. And as a result, nothing has been achieved because all of those T1 PDs got taken out. I actually thought he would have got there in time, but nope, that's good work from WoundedElk. So casualties on both sides there. TAC missiles still coming across the river and still getting shot down, and now we've got some hives going up to assist these 3 factories over here. Blackdeath rapidly building up in the center here, which is going to cause enormous problems going forward for WoundedElk and keep the battle, he hopes, I would imagine, centralized in this portion of the map, well away from anything too sensitive down here. Still just T2 so far. Well, no, I stand corrected. We'd have some T3 land. Manufacturing complete. And already working on a Harbinger there. Is that a tech mismatch? Well, the HQ is there and it's still building T2 units. So, yes, it is. Blackdeath could potentially get caught on the hop here. Surprise T3. It's just one of my favorite units, the Obsidians. I know I mention it every time, but that giant Alpha Strike, outrageous tankiness. Like the T2 equivalent to the Percival, I suppose, in a way. Shadow of a transport, airlifting a Harbinger. Is that going to make it to the main base? Well, there's 2 of them, in fact. Corsairs have locked onto them. The Alumnar manages to drop off the Harbinger, and the other one makes it to safety as well. So WoundedElk successfully completes a drop right into the main base there of Blackdeath. One at the front, one at the back. The one at the back is going to have free reign on at least 4 T2 Mexes, potentially more. The one at the front looking very peaky indeed after taking Corsair fire. It's down to 270 hit points or so. He managed to survive the air attack by bringing in the interceptors, but eventually Mantis come in to finish the job. But Blackdeath still suffering because of this Harbinger, and he says, are you rocking a Smurf account to WoundedElk? And he says, nah, I just got better. Took Blackdeath by surprise, who probably looked at the ratings, the rankings at the beginning of this game, and thought he could relax just a little bit. Not the case, my friend. Looks like we have a guy who's been working hard. Interesting to see what he's at now. This is, as we say, a couple of months ago. Blackdeath trying to counterpunch now with a horde of Mantis. It's got some trouble from behind him, coming from the Harbinger and a couple of Obsidians, and they're going to run headfirst into a new formation of T1 PDs. Some of its fire is going to get blocked by the ground, but most of it's going to get through, and only 2 Mantis survive to get into the back of the base. They're not going to last too long at all. That Harbinger we saw earlier, now with 32 kills to its name, eventually runs out of steam. Only managed to kill 4 Mexes in the end, but it's definitely given WoundedElk some breathing room on eco now. It's 147 to 103, now 108. That's a significant advantage now for our Aeon in this game. Can he make it pay off? And we also have a transition to T3 Air now. WoundedElk with ASFs on the field. The response has come from Blackdeath to the Harbingers, the T3 ground. He has upgraded his land factory and is now producing Loyalists, but is now facing a tech mismatch in the air, as the Corsairs will be facing off against those ASFs, those Aeon Coronas. It's going to be hard to contend with. But Blackdeath not one to give up without a fight. Pushing up the western edge of the screen now, runs into a couple of Obsidians to go, hang on a minute. You guys aren't supposed to be here. Quick bit of micro. Avoid some of the return fire. And he meets up with the other units that were stationed just a little bit further north. And once again, map control returns to a nearly even state, although there's going to be a lot of firepower on the ground out here for Blackdeath. We do have a couple of Harbingers lying in wait to guard the base there for WoundedElk. There are now Loyalists on the ground as well for Blackdeath. If you can afford it, probably be good to throw in a few bricks as well. Help combat those harbs more effectively. But you have to be impressed. 178 now to 109. WoundedElk been one step ahead in this game, just gradually increasing his advantage. Has let Blackdeath harass, has sat back and defended and just ecoed up and gone for the tech mismatch as and when he can. When he's struck, he's made it pay. Transport getting shot down. Now this would really worry me if I was Blackdeath, seeing all of those ASFs in play. And wouldn't you know, we've got a strap bomber on the way as well for WoundedElk. Potentially a two-pronged counterattack, though, on the cards here for Blackdeath. One at the causeway, one at the eastern causeway as well, just above it, in fact. Definitely not feeling like he's got any kind of advantage here. Blackdeath being cagey with his responses, not being overly aggressive. Manages to sneak a couple of rhinos across the river while the Harbingers over here were concerned with the units on the causeway. And there's a lot of NGs that might be about to run into trouble here as those 3 rhinos make it into the shortened curlies. But the real story of the day is this shocker that's heading towards Blackdeath's base, and there's not a thing he can do to stop it. Straight after the T2 power, a nice ground attack takes out both of them with that bomb splash damage. And that's power-locked Blackdeath, dropping his mass production even lower. It's now 224 versus 80. And that Strat Bomber has just 1 Corsair locked on. And that Corsair could be about to find trouble as well as the Coronas come into view. Strat Bomber hangs a Louis and comes back towards the base. Another Strat Bomber up top harassing that northern army. You can see on the mini-map as well. Blackdeath trying to breach the main base. Takes out another T2 P-Gen. What have we got now? He's only producing 1k in power. And he's down about 1.2k on current expenditure. This is very bad news for Blackdeath fans out there. And now it's the T2 mass options in the main base that are feeling the pressure. Blackdeath has to counter on the ground if he can and make some headway. If he doesn't, this game is well and truly over, surely. Still, that Strat Bomber with free reign in that main base. He's trying to get power generation re-established. But all the while, the longer this goes on, the more mass extractors he loses. And there goes another one. Blackdeath manages to squeeze out a couple of bouncers. In fact, 3 of them. So hopefully, for his sake, that will mean that's the last we've heard from that Strat. I think he got shot down off map there. We can turn our attention back to Blackdeath's forces in the north. The smaller force that went up over the plateau is having to withdraw, and there was another force here, a much more sizable one, which was trying to breach in through the side of the main base, but that looks like it's in full retreat as well. And still going to be taking damage from the skies. It's a beautiful bomb right in the middle of that pack. Is it going to follow on its trajectory to take a shot at the ones at the top right? No, he's going to leave the Spectre to deal with that. In terms of map control for the time being, Blackdeath's looking a lot more comfortable, but he's down more than 2-1 on Eco. This is not looking great at all for Blackdeath. Hangs a Louis so he doesn't run into the bouncers in the main base, but does get taken out there by a Myrmidon. So that's the end of that Strat Bomber. But as soon as one's shot down, another one materializes. And in fact, we've got a little harb drop over here. Lumnar loaded up with 2 of them, heading down the western edge of the map. Comes out here. The drop order is actually down here. So looking to get in around the back of Blackdeath's base, which is looking ever more sparsely defended. It has to be said, all of the forces up here trying to force WoundedElk back into a corner and re-establish some authority in this game for Blackdeath. It's not going brilliantly for him, and that drop is successful. Both of those harbs landed unmolested and ready to attack. When I say unmolested, in comes a Corsair. Curse of the Commentator comes in to completely contradict whatever it is that you're about to say. So he's going to split these 2 up, send one off to the plateau and one into the main base. The one into the main base is going to head into some trouble here. There is one Loyalist and a whole bunch of T1. Shield down on the Harb. Harb takes out the Loyalist, shows you just how much more potent those Harbingers are than the Loyalists. There's enough T1 in the area to deal with that. Missed opportunity potentially over here. That Harbinger finally wakes up and starts targeting that T2 mechs at the back. And he will take it down, realigning Blackdeath's eco to 124 to 291. That's an enormous gulf as we pass 31 minutes in this game. Still producing strap bombers, very comfortable with his grip in the air game. If we even attempted T3 air, yes we have. So Blackdeath does have T3 air now. The problem is, can he possibly maintain cohesion on the ground and air game to prevent WoundedElk from closing this one out? It's a tough ask with that deficit, it has to be said. More than 2 to 1 still. Attempted run by over at the far right hand edge of the map. A few renegades brought in to deal with the harbs. No ascendants in the pack whatsoever, so barring an intervention from the Coronas, which look like they've been dispatched, coming across the map as we speak, renegades will get some gun time, and then they're going to withdraw when the Coronas come in, but the Coronas should manage to tidy them up. Oh, they don't pursue. Interesting. And what ground units were being brought in to counter are just severely under tech and of no use whatsoever against that mix of Obsidians and Harbingers. And so Blackdeath withdraws. And now we do at least have an amalgam of bricks up here at the causeway. Something that Blackdeath could do a bit of damage with. Although we're up to 3 strats up here at the main base now for WoundedElk. Blackdeath under siege now. Large numbers of Harbingers coming across the causeway out of the main base for WoundedElk, pursuing that pack of units. Of course, the bricks can just pop underwater and get in around the back. WoundedElk has started a GC, but that was very recently commissioned, so that will take a while, especially with the small amount of build capacity that he's devoted to it. In come the Renegades once again, but this time they will get comfortably tidied up by the ASFs. So this is interesting. Obviously the Harbingers aren't amphibious, so he can't just follow the bricks. Knowing the bricks were coming this way, he's sending the Harbingers on a counterattack down here. Now Blackdeath's commander sitting near some T1 PDs does have a few bricks in the area, and Blackdeath is withdrawing extra ones from the river to help defend the ACU. But this will be the first real concrete gain we've seen for Blackdeath in some time. T2, but mostly T3 mexes under siege. We're at 351 at the moment. We'll check back in a minute to see how WoundedElk is affected by this attack, but look how many strats he has in play. Already down to 318. I think the strats are going to comfortably manage this as well. Those with the Harbingers, of course, as well. And not to mention a lot of Harbingers heading straight for Blackdeath's base. If only he'd put a few Ascendants in there, he would have made this journey without taking any damage whatsoever. But as it happens, Renegades free to engage. Interestingly, no Coronas sent south to deal with the Renegades. Well, they are now being sent that way. Going to take some fire from the emplacements in that middle base. And the Renegades will back off as a result. Those Harbingers now about to breach the main base for Blackdeath. Strats are on the move. And they're beelining straight for Blackdeath's commander, who's well away from any shield coverage and trying to get an extension ready for his new base. He's going to eat a ton of bombs, and that will be game at 36 minutes and 20 seconds. WoundedElk closes it out with a pretty dastardly surprising, well, not that surprising. There were lots of strats on the field. Blackdeath would have been well aware of that, but a nice and tidy snipe to finish it off. And there you go. So you can't take people's ranking for granted. For all you know, something has just clicked in their subcom psyche, and they've got a handle on the game. So it'd be interesting to see if someone wants to check up on what WoundedElk is now on the ladder and post in the comment section below. That would be supremely helpful and informative, and would save me from having to do it. Alright guys, once again, apologies for the previous cast. I will get that out to you ASAP. But as for today, I hope you enjoyed it. As always, more to come from me in the future. And don't forget, if you feel so inclined, you can support me on Patreon. Every donation helps me and by extension the channel and the community. So please give generously if you feel so inclined. And don't forget to like and subscribe. But if you really want to be a help, do it as soon as the video loads, because as we know, apparently that makes it better. Until next time, guys, stay well and stay safe. This is Guile, signing out.